it's easier for me to work to then rather open up and share the things, and especially when I feel convicted on the inside that I know I should be doing something different, and so it's easier for me just to get involved in my work.
We'd be perfectly fine, and then all of a sudden some little thing would come up, and it would just open up some sores again, and it seemed like we'd be back to square one. It was just, we had a hard time with just little stuff. And I think we just wanted to break that cycle.
At times we really felt like some walls were kind of being put up between us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they were things that we already struggled with anyway. I mean, they were communication problems that we drug into our marriage that just got amplified with very little time to communicate, very little time to actually spend just being a married couple.
It seemed like for me, the same issues kept coming up, and I kept dealing with them in the same way, and it just wasn't working.
A thing for me is I want to bottle it up, but I can't. God is calling me to be honest and to communicate things, and that's all I can do, is do what He's asking me to do.
Well, I think it's really interesting, too, the ways that we came into marriage and the different families that we came from, where I came from a family where there's no conflict. Like, there's conflict, but we all just, like, shove it under the rug, as long as we possibly can. And then pretty soon you've got this huge heaping pile of junk underneath your rug, and it starts spilling out. And Troy comes from a family where they stuff it and then they blow up at each other. And so, that does not work very well. So I spent 12 years of marriage running from conflict, and that just builds up walls because then I'm not talking to him, and I feel like he's getting defensive and he doesn't want me to talk to him, and so we're left like completely at an impasse where we don't even like each other.
It's like we could either go this way where we're going to be miserable with each other, or we can make a change and go this.
I initially maybe went thinking, oh, maybe God's going to change Troy, and he did that, but that can't be the reason why I go.
Part of the reason we wanted to go to the marriage conference was because we knew we had some walls up between us, and we wanted to deal with those.
But it was kind of scary too for me, because it meant trusting God with my marriage, which I thought I was doing, but really still had that control, or wanted that control over certain things.
But you have the tools to actually work in a God-centered way at problems in your life.
One thing about a conference, you think, well, I don't want people to see me going to this conference. They'll think there's something wrong. You're not alone.
It kind of shook us up out of our comfortableness, being okay with that, and kind of shakes you up a little bit, so you realize that's not right and that's not how God intended it. So
it was also helpful to me because then I could, two things, I could learn more about myself as far as the patterns I had. I couldn't quite put a name on it, but then when I would be talking about bitterness and resentment, it's like, oh, that is me.
It is so, I think it's well directed so that you do touch on all the really important parts of a marriage and the important parts of yourself.
It was nice just to have time where it was set aside that we were going to work through these things, we were going to talk about it, and we were not going to be distracted with me cleaning the house or taking care of the kids or work we had to do.
I sort of felt like after the marriage conference, I sort of felt like what we did was hit a restart button, where we got to sort of like, I buried the hatchet on a whole bunch of things, a bunch of hurts that I'd had that we just hadn't really dealt with them.
I'm more at peace now.
It's been is a process of taking those things that we've learned and developing new patterns, and having to consciously develop new patterns and stop the old ones. We actually catch ourselves going back to the same stuff that we used to argue about, or the same ways that we used to communicate, and then having to say, and start all over again. And it has to be, okay, I know why I am this way, now what am I going to do about it? And how are we going to work together to change it?
I could really get steamed up about something, and I had a choice. I could either do what I'd always done and it not work, or I could try and trust God with coming to Him first.
I think we came away both really changed. I felt different.
Once you start meeting the needs, the way God's designed us to meet our spouse's needs, that's really special.
So I can honestly say that we really like each other again. We really have fun together again, and we had lost that.
This is one of those things, I think almost everybody ought to do this every year.